His voice was lost in his throat. Then the room changed, red lights flashed, a siren began to scream. Leary's eyes grew wide. "They know you're here," she said. "You must go. They will take you too." But Eli stood still. He looked at the cage. He looked at the girl. She was not just a creature. She was a child, a living child who wanted love and safety. He turned toward the hallway. "I'll come back," he said. "I'll get you out, and your mom too, promise?" she asked. "Promise." The door behind him slammed shut heavy. Steps echoed in the distance. Voices shouted in a language he did not know. Eli ran faster than before, but his mind stayed with her, with Leary. With the girl in the glass, the girl who whispered, "Can I have a dad now, please?" Darkness followed Eli like a shadow as he moved through the cold halls of the station. His breath was heavy, his mind full of the voice he had heard. He could not forget her, Leary, the girl with silver eyes, the child who asked for a dad. He had returned to his ship, but he could not leave. He could not sleep. He sat in the pilot seat, staring at the broken station. He thought of her voice, soft and scared. He thought of her mother trapped below. He stood and picked up his light pack. He placed his hand on the cold wall of his ship. "I will not run." He said this to no one. Then he stepped out and walked back into the dark. The halls were silent. The lights flickered again. He walked slower this time. He moved past the room with the glass cage, but it was empty. Leary was gone. Panic filled his chest. He searched the room. No signs of a fight, no blood. Only one thing remained, a drawing scratched into the wall. Picture A, tall human, a small alien girl, a taller alien woman. They were holding hands. Eli touched the drawing gently. She believed he would come back. He had to find her again. He followed the map on his old scanner. There were rooms below the floor. Hidden rooms. He never noticed them before. He found a hatch covered by metal crates. He pushed them aside and climbed down. The air grew colder. He stepped into a tunnel with broken lights and metal pipes. Water dripped from the ceiling. Somewhere ahead was a voice. He could not hear words, only sounds like a song or maybe a cry. He followed it. At the end of the tunnel was a door. It was sealed. He pressed his hand against the panel and it blinked red. No access. He remembered what Leary said. They watched, they listened always. He looked around. There was a vent above the door. It was small, too small for a man, but maybe big enough for someone else. He walked back to a side room filled with old tools. He found a small flying bot used for cleaning. He powered it up. He placed a tiny camera on it and guided it into the vent. He watched the screen inside. The sealed room was a white floor and silver walls. In the middle was another cage, but not glass. This time it was made of energy. Blue lines moved like light waves. Inside was Leary. She sat on the floor again, but this time her eyes were closed. Around her were machines. They buzzed softly. They sent pulses into her head. Eli clenched his fists. What were they doing to her? What kind of place was this? The camera turned and showed more. Behind a thick wall of glass were people. Not many, just 2 humans and 1 alien with sharp eyes. They watched her closely. One of them spoke into a recorder. Subject shows memory patterns of Earth culture. Repeat a father figure. Request continues during sleep cycle. Emotional link may be used for further test. Eli felt sick. They were studying her like an animal, using her feelings for experiments. He pulled the camera back. He had seen enough. He needed access. He needed to get through that door. He climbed back to the upper floor. There was an old control room near the east wing. He had seen it before. He hoped it still worked. Inside the control room were dead screens and old chairs. He searched the panel. He found a broken access key. He used his tools to repair it. The lights blinked. The screens turned on one by one. He searched the map. He found the room Z19, code name Observation Bay. He overrode the door lock somewhere. Below, a beep echoed. The sealed door was now open. Eli rushed back through the tunnel. His steps were loud, too loud. He reached the open door and stepped inside. The lights flickered. Leary opened her eyes. She saw him. She smiled. Eli ran to the cage. He touched the panel. It asked for a code. "I do not know the code," he said. She stood and walked to the edge of the light cage. "Place your hand on mine again," she said. He did. A soft light passed through the barrier. The cage disappeared. Eli stared in shock. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I trusted you," she said. They hugged. Just for a moment, then a sound broke the silence. A loud alarm again. This time it was different. The room began to shake. A screen flashed. Red unauthorized breach detected. Seal all exits. Eli grabbed Leary's hand. "We must find your mother now," he said. Leary nodded. She pointed toward the far wall behind. "That walla dark place where the light does not go, that is where they keep her." Eli turned toward the wall. He was ready. He had come for There, but now he would not leave without both the girl and her mother. Not this time. The wall stood silent and tall like a giant secret hiding behind cold metal and wires. Eli looked at it with eyes full of fire and fear. He felt the weight of time pressing against his back beside him. Leary stood still, her small hand holding his tightly. Her skin glowed soft and pale, but her heart beat fast with hope. Behind this wall, she said, lives my mother. They call it the Black Room. It is deep and far and full of silence that screams. Eli nodded and stepped forward. His hands moved across the surface, feeling for a switch or crack or anything that could open the way. There was nothing. He looked at Leary. Can you feel her? He asked. She closed her eyes for a moment. She said nothing. Then she pointed toward the floor below. Eli found a vent under the wall. It was narrow and dark and led down into the unknown. We have to crawl, he said. You read? Leary did not speak. She just dropped to her knees and began to move through the tunnel. Eli followed. The air inside was thick and heavy like the breath of something old. The walls of the tunnel were rough and sharp in places. They moved in silence, only the sound of their breath and the slow scrape of their clothes against the metal. After minutes that felt like hours, they reached the end. A small opening led to a room that felt colder than space itself. Eli pushed the grate open and stepped into the dark. Lights flickered weakly above. The room was large and empty except for a single shape in the center. A cage without bars, just floating light inside it, sat a figure, tall and still. Leary ran forward. Mother, she whispered. The figure looked up, eyes like stars opened and met her gaze. Leary, my child, you are here. Her voice was music, soft and strong. Eli stepped closer. The mother's body was thin and weak, but her presence filled the room like fire. You brought her back, she said to Eli. You kept your promise. Eli nodded. We are not safe, he said. They know I am here. The mother placed her hand against the barrier of light. It hummed and shimmered, but did not fall. This cage is deeper. It is connected to the core of the station, she said. I cannot break it alone. Eli looked around. He saw wires leading from the cage to a console in the corner. He ran to it. The screen blinked with strange symbols. Leary stepped beside him. Her hand reached out and touched the screen. It changed now. The symbols looked like Earth words. Eli smiled. Together they pressed the commands. The cage dimmed. The mother stepped forward and the light faded around her. She walked free for the first time in many years. But then the room changed. A loud voice echoed from the walls. Unauthorized access, security protocol active. Red lights flashed. Doors sealed. Gas began to hiss from the ceiling. They want to stop us, the mother said. Not yet, Eli replied. He ran to the console and shut off the gas valve. It worked for a moment, but then a new alarm began to scream. Self-destruct in 10 minutes. The station is going to explode. We must leave now. Leary grabbed her mother's hand. Eli led the way back through the tunnel. The crawl felt longer. The air was hotter. The walls shook. They reached the upper floor. Eli looked at his map. We are close to my ship, he said, but the main path was blocked by fire. We take the old cargo route, he said. They ran through narrow halls, past broken signs, past fallen beams behind them. The station groaned like a dying beast. They reached the hangar. Eli's ship stood ready. He opened the hatch and helped them inside. He ran to the pilot's seat and powered the engine. Nothing. The lights were dead. The fuel line was broken. He cursed under his breath. The clock on the screen showed 5 minutes. Leary stepped forward. She touched the controls. Her hand glowed brighter than before. The ship blinked to life. Engines powered. Systems green. How did you? She smiled. I do not know. The ship lifted. The hangar door opened just in time. They flew out into space. As the station behind them exploded in fire and light, they did not look back inside the ship. Eli sat silent. The mother held Leary close. You saved us, she said to Eli. He looked at them. No, you saved me, he said. Outside, the stars watched them fly into the unknown. A girl, a mother, and the man who answered, a whisper in the dark. The stars outside blinked slowly like old memories watching from far away as the ship floated in quiet space between fire and peace. Eli sat at the front staring into the dark sky. While the echoes of the station's fall faded behind them, he could still feel the heat of the explosion and the weight of fear in his chest, but more than that, he felt something strange, something warm behind him. Leary sat curled up beside her mother, whose name was Anora. Her eyes were closed, her breath slow, her arms wrapped around the small glowing child like she had never let go. But there was pain in her movements and a shaking in her voice when she spoke. She is weak, Leary said softly to Eli. They took her energy, they took her light. Eli stood and walked To them his hands unsure his heart even more, so he looked at Inara and then at the controls. We need to land, he said. We need a place where she can rest. Leary nodded, but her eyes were far away, like she was still inside the cage. There is a place, she whispered. It is not far, not safe, not clean, but it is hidden. Eli trusted her. He changed course and flew toward the coordinates she gave. The ship entered a cloud of space dust and passed through layers of old satellite rings. They reached a small, forgotten moon, dark on one side and broken on the other. Eli landed near an old mining post. The walls were cracked and the lights gone, but there was no danger here, only silence. He helped them out. Leary walked beside her mother, guiding her gently with both hands like light, holding shadow inside the post. They found a room with a bed still while Leonara lay down and closed her eyes again. She whispered something in a language Eli did not know, and the walls of the room began to glow with soft blue light. What is that? He asked. She is protecting us, said Leary. Even now she uses her last power to keep us hidden. Eli sat down and looked at the small alien child. You're not just a child, are you? Leary tilted her head. I was born in light and dream, but I've lived in cages and tests. She walked to a box in the corner of the room. She opened it and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Futoshi gave it to Eli. It was old and faded, but he saw a face he recognized, a man in a pilot suit smiling with a little girl on his shoulders. That is from Earth, he said. Leary nodded. They showed us dreams from your world, told us family was a lie, but I believe the dream was really lie. Looked at the photo again and felt something rise inside him. He did not know the man in the picture, but he wanted to be someone like him. Leary sat beside her mother again, her eyes filled with silent questions. Will she wake up? She asked. Eli did not answer. He stood and searched the room. He found old parts, wires, batteries, and tools. He started working. Hours passed in quiet effort. Eli built a small energy core using what he had. It was not strong, but it was pure. He placed it near Anarash, opened her eyes slowly. Thank you, she whispered. Leary smiled and leaned closely together. Again Anara placed a hand on Eli's arm. You risked your life for strangers. Why? Eli looked at both of them. Because she asked for a dad, he said. And I wanted to answer. Anara closed her eyes again, not from pain, but from peace. Leary stood and walked outside. Eli followed. They sat on a rock looking up at the stars. What happens now? He asked. Leary looked at the sky. They will come for us again. Who? Eli asked. The ones who built the cages, the ones who made the station. They are not just scientists, they are collectors of power and fear. Eli felt anger rise again. Then we fight, he said. Leary smiled. You are human, she said, but not like the others. You believe in more than machines. Eli nodded. I believe in family now. A sound broke the stillness. A soft beep from the ship. A signal. Unknown ship approaching fast, very fast. Eli and Leary ran back in city. Anara stood on her own, now weak, but strong in spirit. They are here, she said. Then we are ready, Eli replied. Together they faced the door, not with weapons, but with something more: hope, trust, and the bond of a promise made in the dark. The sky above the broken moon turned red as the unknown ship cut through the clouds like a blade made of light and fire. Eli stood at the door, his heart steady, his breath slow, his eyes watching. The storm arrived beside him. Leary held her mother's hand, both silent, both glowing like stars before they fall. The ship landed without sound, its surface black and smooth like water frozen in time. From the belly of the craft, a ramp lowered and 5 figures stepped out, tall and cold, with faces hidden behind silver masks. They moved like shadows given form. They said nothing. They needed no words. A voice came through the air, but not from them. It came from the ship itself, mechanical and sharp return. The subjects, no harm will come to the human. Cooperation ensures survival. Eli laughed without joy. I have heard that lie before. He looked at Laredo. You trust me? Yes, she said without pause. Then run. He threw a flash charge onto the ground and smoke filled the air. He grabbed Leary and Inara and pulled them into the old tunnel behind the mining post. They moved fast through the narrow path. The walls shook as heavy boots followed close behind. Inara stumbled once, but Leary caught her. Eli turned and fired a small charge from his tool to collapse. The passage rocks fell and blocked the way. For now they kept moving. There is another exit, Leary said. Through the old water shaft. Eli nodded and followed her voice. Through the dark they reached a round chamber with a large metal pipe that led up to the surface. I will go first, Eli said. He climbed the ladder and reached the top, where a small hatch opened to a hidden valley behind the ridge. He looked around. Clear. He helped Leary and Inara climb out, but something was wrong. The ground beneath them flashed blue. A net of energy rose around them, trapping them inside a dome of light. Eli hit the walls, but they did not break above them. The black ship hovered once more. The same voice returned. Subject reunion confirmed. Emotional data complete. Phase 3 begins. The ground opened beneath them and they fell through light. They landed in a white room, cold and empty. The walls showed screens. Each screen showed Memorias, Lurie in the cage, Inara in the dark, Eli walking alone. They were watching. Always a door opened and a figure stepped in, this time without a mask. A woman with pale skin and gray eyes. She looked at Eli with a strange smile. You are the variable, she said. You changed the pattern. Eli stepped forward. Who are you? She touched a screen and it showed his face. We built the dream. We tested the bond. She pointed to Lurie. She was not supposed to believe, but she did. And you answered. Lurie held Inara close. We are not your test. The woman turned to them. But you are you. Always were. Your minds are keys, your hearts are locks. Eli clenched his fists. Let us go. The woman nodded. Once, yes. She raised her hand and the wall behind them turned into a door. Leave if you wish. But remember, we got what we came for. Eli looked at Lurie. What does she mean? Lurie closed her eyes. They copied us, our bond, our code. They will use it again on others. Eli felt a storm rise in his chest. We cannot let that happen. He looked around and saw the central console. He ran to it and placed both hands on the core. It pulsed with power. Lurie joined him, placing her hand beside his. The lights flickered. Edena walked to the edge and whispered words in her tongue. The room began to shake. The woman stepped back. What are you doing? Eli stared at her. Ending the trap. The console burned with light as their hands poured emotion into the code. Not numbers, not commands, but memory and feeling, pain, hope, love. The system cracked. The screens turned to static. The walls began to fall. The woman screamed as the floor split beneath her. The trio ran through the falling room into the hall beyond. Sirens blared. The ship above shook. They reached a hangar. A small pod ship sat ready as if waiting. They climbed in. Eli took the seat. He looked once more at Lurie and Anna. Are you ready? They both nodded. The pod launched into the sky as the black ship crumbled behind them. No more cages. No more tests, only stars ahead. The stars spun like rivers of fire as the small pod burst through the clouds of smoke and broken metal trailing behind the dying ship that once held them prisoner. Eli gripped the controls with shaking hands while Lurie sat beside him, her eyes closed, her breath steady, her mind deep in thought. Behind them, Inara pressed her hand to the glass, watching the pieces of the black ship fall away into nothingness. The silence inside the pod felt heavy, like 1,000 voices had just gone quiet at the same time. Eli looked at the fuel gauge and frowned. They had power, but not enough for far travel. They needed a place to land before the core overheated. Larry opened her eyes and pointed toward a cluster of moons near a red gas giant. There, she said without doubt. There's life and safety. I can feel it. Eli trusted her again. He turned the ship toward the closest moon. With green oceans and golden forests, the pod shook as it entered the thin atmosphere. Wings screamed around them like wild creatures trying to tear them apart. Eli held on and guided the pod between two mountain ridges. Smoke rose from the engine. The landing would not be clean. The pod hit the ground with a crash and slid across the soft earth, leaving a trail of fire and broken stone. It stopped near a lake that glowed under the alien sun. Eli pushed the hatch open and climbed out, coughing. From the smoke, Lurie followed, pulling Inara with care. The forest around them was quiet but full of strange colors, trees with silver leaves, flowers that hummed in the wind, water that shimmered like stars. Eli looked at the ship and shook his head. We cannot fix it without parts. We are stuck. Lurie smiled softly. Maybe we are safe now, but Inara stood still, her face pale, her hands cold. No, she said, they will not stop. They never do. They want what we carry. What do we carry? Eli asked. Inara looked at Lurie, then at him. Connection, a bond that cannot be made with wires or rules. They saw it in you, and they fear it, so they will come again with more ships, more traps, more lies. Eli clenched his jaw and walked into the forest. He needed to think. He needed air. But the forest spoke to him in whispers like the station once did, only this time the voice was not Lurie, it was something else. He turned and saw a figure in the distance. Not human, not machine. It was light and shape and silence. He called to it, but it vanished into the trees. When he returned to the camp, he found Lurie waiting alone. Where is your mother? He asked. She is with the lake, speaking to the old water, she says. It remembers Eli sat down beside her. What are you really? Lyrish looked at him without fear. I am like you, but also not my people lived among stars and dreams. We learn not from books, but from feelings. When the humans came, they wanted to cut that part out, to keep only what they could use. Eli nodded slowly. You see more than I. Deliri touched his hand. No, I just see different. That night, the sky turned purple, winds moved without sound. Inara returned and sat near the fire Eli had built. She held something in her hands, a small crystal that glowed with a deep golden light. This is what they wanted. It holds the memory of our kind. All our songs, all our stories. They think if they take this, they will understand us, but they do not see the truth. Our truth lives in hearts, not in stones. Eli looked at the fire, and then at both of them. Then we protect it, not with weapons, with something stronger. Leary smiled again. Family. The ground shook before dawn. The sound of engines roared in the distance. They are here. Inara said. Eli stood and looked at the sky. A new ship, larger than the last, blocked the sun. This time we fit. Inara raised her hands, and the trees around them came alive. Roots moved like snakes. Leaves formed shields. The forest listened. Larry stepped forward, her hands glowing. She is ready. Eli pulled out the last charge from his pack. He would hold the line. They would not take them again. They would not break what had been built from trust and pain and love. The final run had begun, and none of them would run alone. The sun rose behind the red mountain, casting long shadows over the quiet forest, where smoke still danced through the air like ghosts remembering the battle that almost ended everything. The ship that had come to take them was now a broken shell, half buried in the glowing lake, its metal skin torn by roots and fire and light. Eli stood at the edge of the water, his clothes stained with ash. His arms scratched, his face tired but calm. Beside him stood Leary, her silver eyes watching the wind move through the tall trees. Behind them, Inara rested against a smooth stone, her breath slow, her hands folded over the golden crystal she had protected with everything she had. They did not speak. They did not need to. The silence between them was full of meaning. It was not the silence of fear or pain or emptiness. It was the silence of something holy. Eli walked toward the trees and picked up a small broken piece of the enemy ship. He turned it in his hands, then dropped it to the ground. No more cages, he said. No more tests. No more. Leary looked at him and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm and strong. You kept your promise, she said. You found her. You stayed. You fought. Eli smiled. I did not know I could until I met you. Inara opened her eyes and stood slowly. Her strength had returned piece by piece, like light pouring into a dark room. We cannot go back, she said. They will search again, but not here. This place is older than their machines. The forest remembers more than they ever will. Eli nodded and looked around. Then we build. Leary turned and pointed toward the hill where sunlight touched the ground in golden stripes. There, she said, that is where I want to live. That is where we will plant our first tree. They walked together toward the hill, each step a choice, each breath a part of something new. They found an open field with soft grass and stones shaped like sleeping animals. The wind carried songs without words. Eli picked a place near the center and dropped to his knees. He dug a hole with his hands. No tools, only truth. Leary placed a small glowing seed into the soil. It pulsed once, then rested. The seed is from my mother's memory. She said it will grow into something the galaxy has never seen. Inara placed her hand over the earth and whispered. The ground accepted the gift, and the first root took hold. They sat there until the stars came out. Leary leaned against Eli. She looked up at him with wide, quiet eyes. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Can I call you Dad now? Eli looked at her. He did not speak for a moment. He only breathed. Then he placed his arm around her and held her close. Yes, always. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, like they had heard and understood, like they were part of this promise. 2 days passed like clouds drifting without hurry. They built a shelter from the broken ship and the fallen trees. They made fire from old wires and soft leaves. They told stories not of war but of dreams. Leary learned to cook simple food using stones and sun heat. Eli taught her how to fly a small glider built from the pod's wing. Inara sang to the forest each night, and the trees leaned closer to listen. One evening, Eli found an old screen still working in the wreck. He cleaned it and fixed the power. He found one image still saved in memory, a man from Earth holding a little girl, smiling without fear. Leary stood beside him and touched the screen. That was the first dad I ever saw, she said now, I have one of my own. Eli smiled and pressed a button. The screen captured a new photo him Leary, an oratogather in the golden light of a world reborn later. He placed the image beside the new seed that was now a small tree. Its leaves shimmered with silver light and its branches reached toward the star. Sonara stood beside him. Do you still feel like a stranger in the stars? She asked. Eli looked at the sky, then at the tree, then at the girl who called him Dad. No, he said, now I feel like I am home. The night fell gently and the stars sang softly above. A real family slept beneath a silver tree on a planet no one else remembered, and the universe turned quietly toward the future.